Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Educated Home Snap channel. How you doing? How you doing? Yeah, that's better. Anyways, today we're going to be talking about Ghost Spider. It's the new release. Season pass is just beginning. Definitely make sure that you check if you can go to the Marvel Snap website and get a discount on the season pass purchases if you're going to be buying that. But other than that, let's talk about the season pass card, what it looks good for, my thoughts overall. Let's begin. So Ghost Spider is a 2 energy, 3 power card with the ability on reveal the last card you played move here. So its base stats aren't bad. 2 for 3 is pretty standard among 2 drops for being like acceptable stat line, excluding the effect, right? So the effect is really what makes a difference in whether it's good. And the ability to move the last card you played here is definitely a very powerful effect, very similar to Doctor Strange, which is a 3 energy, 3 power card with a very similar effect, except it moves the strongest card that you have on the board. So, kind of very similar. Most likely, if you're playing this late game, the last card you played is going to be your strongest card. So, it essentially becomes a Doctor Strange for 2, which if Doctor Strange was a 2 mana card, would be extremely good, and I think way more played than it is right now. Right now, Doctor Strange is mostly relegated to move decks that can fully take advantage of it, but sometimes you do see it just as a play this and move a big card to another lane. It's not super popular, but I do think with Ghost Spider, that might be more common. So overall, when it comes to this card, I think there's a lot of benefits to it. First of all, it's good in move decks, but move decks are its own archetype. We don't know how strong it's going to end up being, like move archetype in this meta, in this season with all the move decks coming out. So right now it's hard to know, is move decks the way? This is the future, and this is a part of it. That could be the case, but we don't know for now. I do think what's more likely is that this will be more of a tech card, kind of similar to Enchantress, kind of similar to Shang-Chi. But Shang-Chi's like has so much presence, it's less of a tech card and more of just like a tool. Where if you are running things that have big weaknesses to Shang-Chi, Enchantress, other tech cards, you can say, okay, I'm going to move this card away in case they Enchantress me, in case they Shang-Chi me, and I'll just win the other lane. They can invest into this lane. I don't care. Their tech card is useless, and I'll win another lane. So I do think that's going to be more common of a use case unless move deck is so reasonable to play that it becomes meta. But right now, that's not the case, and I'm not going to talk like it is going to be the case. But overall, I want to talk about some of the cards that I do think have some synergies with this card. So obviously, first thing is like all move cards, but I think it's like not really fair to just put, you can put every single move card in here. Yeah, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. And if you are going to run move, then that's perfectly fine. First thing I do have is just Ebony Maw. I think that could be something where you now fill up a lane with Ebony Maw on turn 4. So you play Ebony Maw on 3 somewhere, and in turn 4 you can play Ghost Spider another 2-drop or 1-drops if you are running lots of 1-drops. And that way you can more realistically fill the Ebony Maw lane. Most likely when you are playing Ebony Maw on 3, it's hard to fill the lane unless you're going like all 1-drops. But if you play like a 1-on-1, a 2-on-2, and then another 2 and Ebony Maw, and then you play Ghost Spider plus another 2 or something like that, it's a lot easier to have four slots in that Ebony Maw lane. You invest like maybe 5 mana, but you can have like 16 power, especially if it's like Nebula or something like that. So that could be something for maybe aggressive decks to take advantage of, to be able to have Ebony Maw really fill a lane. Next thing is Craven. Craven, multiple man, those really feel the same, like just move deck pieces. I just want to have something to represent. Do you think Craven with Silk coming out is also something to take look at? But generally, I do think move decks will have more presence once Spider-Man 2099 comes out. I think without that extra card, there's not that much of an argument. There is some argument. I definitely know there's going to be some players that are trying to move decks regardless. But I do think once 2099 comes out, then you can really fully see how strong move deck will be, or if it's underperforming. So for now, like obviously move decks are going to see more presence, but until 2099 comes out, it's really hard to say like whether this is the new meta or not, because I do think most meta decks will be including that card, so it's hard to really judge the archetype without the card you need. Invisible Woman is something I think is a cool tech, especially with the buff that people have been trying, and I could definitely see you playing Ghost Spider in there and just waiting until the last turn. The Ghost Spider comes out, and then you can move something really powerful into that lane, and maybe your opponent isn't expecting you to move like I don't know a Dino or something, whatever card you played last there. So that could be pretty cool. The downside with that is that most likely you're going to hit something you've already played, right? So it's not super fluid. You'd have to do something like wave on 5, right? So you'd have to wave on 5, Ghost Spider on 6, and then play like your big guy somewhere, So it's a little bit more convoluted. It's not as simple. Just play Invisible Woman and it works, right? You have to make sure that the last card you're playing is worth it, or so. But it is something being able to proc it in a hidden fashion, not and have your opponent not really know that it's coming while playing something big. On reveals could definitely take a look at it. Anyways, next up we have Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange is kind of very similar to Ghost Spider, but you can kind of use both of their effects in the same turn if you wanted to, right? Let's say you play something big on 5, you want to move it around, or it takes full advantage of the move archetype, like it's a big vulture already and you really need it to win like Nexus or something, right? You could play the vulture earlier on, like with maybe like Iron Fist Vulture, and then you go Doctor Strange. Well, you would go Spider into Doctor Strange, and then you could really have a really big card. You could argue that you may as well play Heimdall and just not care if you're gonna do all that effort. Just play the Heimdall. It's generally fine, but it is cool to have multiple move around effects. If your deck it becomes very focused on that, it's gonna be really hard for your opponent to know exactly what lanes you're really contesting until the final turn, and that could be a powerful tool to work into the archetype if that's the way you want to go. But it's something to look into. Hulk Blaster is kind of cool because if you do Hulk Blaster something, the card you Hulk Blaster becomes the last card you played. So let's say you have like Human Torch, you could Hulk Blaster like Human Torch and then move it with Ghost Spider, right? So that could be a turn 6 play if you go Human Torch, Hulk Blaster plus Ghost Spider on 6. That's 15 power because the Human Torch will go to 12, and then the 12, and then plus the 3 from the Ghost Spider. So that's without any extra like move decks. You could really have some power there with Hulk Blaster, and I do think that is a pretty cool tech to be able to move something surprisingly. So that's something could be used. Absorbing Man can copy the Ghost Spider. It's not super great because a lot of times you'll probably just be copying the Ghost Spider itself, right? Because it has to be the last card played. So you're really only copying the Ghost Spider. But want to put it in, you could definitely argue it's not really needed. Dino is more a representation of big cards. So something like, well, anything big essentially you want to protect from Shang-Chi, you want to protect from Enchantress. Dino, well, Ghost Spider will move it to the other lane. So that's something you can do. Dr. Octopus I thought was pretty good use case because usually the lane you play Dr. Octopus in, you're not winning. So Ghost Spider, you can move that power to another lane and really have the effect. You'll remove a lot of their tools, plus having the 12 power flip. So that could be something to take advantage of if you want to just mess with them. So I do think that could be pretty viable. It kind of annoys me how playable Dr. Octopus feels when I talk about stuff, maybe it's too memey sometimes. But when I'm talking about cards, it's like, ooh, the Doctor Octopus synergy is pretty high here. But then anytime I'm playing, it's like, yeah, do I want to give him cards on the board? Nah, I never feel like doing it. Especially with cards like Doctor Doom and stuff like that, cards that can affect other lanes. It's right now Doctor Doom's really popular, so sometimes it feels okay, but then like you get Doctor Doom and you're just like, I didn't really get an advantage anymore. So you always have to be careful about that. And they were gonna play Doctor Doom anyway, so let's be real. And then Odin is pretty interesting. If you Odin it right, you'll move the last card again, right? Because it has to wait until the Odin procs. So you could move something earlier and then Odin and move something again. So you'd really have to be using an on reveal deck, I bet, but it could be pretty cool to have that kind of synergy work out there. So overall, like that's not the most amount of options. This is more of a tech card, and when it comes to archetypes, obviously the move archetype is the most common that people are going to talk about. And then I think the other uses is more tech. So you have to move something is an arguable downside where you can't really leave things where they are. And especially if you want to only have one thing in a lane, you can't really make that one thing a ghost spider, right? Because she needs to move something. So there is some drawbacks of playing this, but some of the upsides, right? Shang-Chi is pretty popular. And being able to bait them playing their removal, their Shang-Chi, their Enchantress, anything like that can be a very nice way of winning a game. But most of the time, you'll probably just want to, protect your unit. Say, as long as you have priority, say you play the Red Skull, you're playing Shuri into Red Skull, and you want to protect that unit, you can definitely say, okay, I'm going to Ghost Spider, move the Red Skull away. Another thing I think is pretty cool is let's say you have incredible power in a lane, right? Like you're winning a lane 30 something points, right? A lot of the times people are not going to invest into that lane that you're winning by. They're saying, okay, he has 30 points, I have 6 points here. I'm not going to invest in that lane. So what you can do is Ghost Spider move some of that power out into a different lane and take advantage of the fact that people won't contest if you're winning extremely hard. So that could be a strategy where you just stack a lane really hard, maybe with Shuri or something, and then once they think, okay, I'm not gonna contest that lane, well then you just move the power to another lane and just say, yeah, psych, I'm actually contesting this other lane here. Here's 20 power now on this lane. So that could be something really viable, I would say. The only downside is if that becomes meta, then people will start accounting for it, right? So for now, right, it's everyone's theory crafting. No one really knows how it's going to fully flesh out. My thoughts: you can definitely buy the card. I do think it's going to be playable. I do think it is something that has some use cases. I'm just a little bit worried that until move is established, like how far people are going to take the full advantage of this card, because the card is good. This card is good. It's just that, are you going to want to play it? Are you going to build a deck where you can take advantage of the moving aspect of it? Are you gonna, because you kind of have to have some advantages, right? Most normal decks don't really care where the card is played, right? If you're playing like Patriot, you don't care. If you're playing Hulk, right, you want to play Hulk on 6. So any deck that runs a 6-drop, right, that you pretty much always want to play on 6, you can't really fully take advantage of this unless you're going to be moving earlier, which is generally fine since it's a 2-3, the base stats are good. But then it's like, why not play Jeff, right, or something like that? So you do have to take advantage of the ability, but it is an ability that's most likely going to see play in the future, and I would be surprised if meta decks don't at least consider this card even as a tech. So should be fun. I don't know what decks will run this for now, besides move decks, because it's more of a tech card than an Enchantress, right? It's like trying to build a deck for Enchantress, right? Like, what does that mean? You're playing Sarah Control. I don't think if Enchantress came out, that's the deck people would have designed for Enchantress. Like, oh yeah, just put this in Sarah and Shang-Chi, obviously. So there's definitely some ideas there, and we'll have to see. But it's a fun card. I do think it's strong. So hopefully you guys enjoy the new season. I'm definitely waiting for Conquest, and I do have some tournament to prepare for it. But take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one. Once you watch him, you